when you get into something new, most important thing you can do is to decide not what you know, but what you don't know. Mm-hmm. And then you bring in people to fill in those spaces, and it's a team approach. I remember one night going to Manual to play ball, and they put me guarding a 6'11" fella.
Oh, no.
I could hit him in the knees, but...
Hey guys, it is Hometown Hustle here with your guests, Rachel Brittingham,
Grafton Sizemore,
and Brittany Jackson.
And we are so excited not only to be sitting down with you guys this evening, but also this is a pretty special episode. One,
super special.
I mean, A, at the very beginning, I didn't know that we would ever make it here. Two, it's summer. It's almost time for summertime.
I know.
And we promised
so
ourselves
ready.
this break.
Son.
And so tonight is our very last episode in our first season. We've done a whole season, guys.
I'm shocked when we talked about this back, what was it, last May or June? I mean, we're almost a year from when this even became an idea.
Insane.
And we made it this far, and there's been challenges. It's been tough.
We've learned a lot.
Mm-hmm.
But you think about that. We have had, how many episodes? This is 8?
This is 9.
9.
Yeah.
10.
Oh, no,
10.
you're right. This is 10. This is episode 10.
So 10 episodes in our first season. So 10 amazing individuals who believed in us and came and sat down with us. And then all the thousands of you guys that have been watching on all of our different platforms. Like, it wasn't just mom and dad after all. In fact,
It wasn't.
I was
It wasn't.
having this, you'll find this hilarious. I was talking to my dad in the office earlier today, and I mentioned that I was super excited to be sitting down with today's guest. And he said, "Why would you be interviewing him?" I said, "Well, for my podcast, Dad. You know, I sit down with people on my podcast." He goes,
no.
"What podcast?"
Mr. Branningham.
I think we have more consistent viewers outside of our family. They're like, I already hear you enough, you know?
I'm sure that's what my dad's like, "Why would I want to listen to her talk any more than she already does?"
Well, yeah. I talked to my mom the other day, and I was asking her about something. She's like, I've got to catch up. And I'm like, well, you've got the whole summer. So by September, it better be caught up. No, I'm kidding. I'm
No,
kidding.
my mom's so sweet though. She was like, "Paul, she's famous." I'm like, only a mother's love.
Right. That's great. No, it's been fun. We've got to know a lot about people in our community. We've got to know a lot about events going on in our community. We
Yeah.
already have a lineup for season 2.
We do.
I mean, we're
We
ready
do.
for the people that are coming in season 2. And we've gotten a lot of interest out of it. And it's weird because I was thinking, you know, are we going to keep a crowd? But what I noticed as we went through this is we're hitting so many different groups. There are people who are not going to watch all 10
Correct.
episodes.
Yeah,
Right.
they're going to watch the ones that are of interest to them.
And so we're trying to realize that in season 2 as well is there's so many spheres in this place that we can hit to make sure that we bring something to the table for everybody in the
I love
community.
that about it.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun doing that. And so for us, we had 1 or 2 episodes that were just us. We got to know a lot about each other, I think, through this whole process. We've become really good friends during
have.
a lot of this. And not that we weren't friends already,
Right.
but this was challenging. We got to see each other at our best, at our worst, all of it.
Brittany is definitely the techie one out of the two,
Yep.
out of the group. I actually am probably the least techie. You both can take that title. The late nights of me rushing off to get my kids while they finished cleaning all of this up and putting the studio back together. Like, there's just the personal sacrifices. I just want to thank you both for being on board with this and everything that has been poured in. You guys have been the heart and soul. And
Well, and to you guys
backbone.
too, you both have kids and everything. I've got my pup. I mean, I love going and seeing my dog. Don't get me wrong, but no, it's the amount of time that you put in this. And then Brittany, I know, I guess it was episode 8 or episode 8. I think that she said, "Hey, can you help me put this one up?" I got a real appreciation real quick about how hard it was to
It's
upload
so
all
aggravating
this stuff.
sometimes.
She stormed out of the
make sure
office the other day. She was like, "This computer."
That's so
It just
funny.
randomly just decided it didn't want to work.
And I was like,
Keyboards don't work.
this thing's taking like 3 hours to load, Brittany. This is supposed to take this long. She's like, yep. I'm like, oh, okay, gotcha. It was.
She's like, "I do this all the time."
Sorry.
Listen, I'll be getting up at 5 a.m. That's when it starts. You
So-
connect to your hotspot on the way.
Next season, we will be coming out at 1 and 2 o'clock. Different time frame.
But you know what makes
So-
it all worth it? Like truly getting to know these incredible individuals. Like I walk through our community now and I'll see Mayor Gregory, and it's like getting to hear his story and like really knowing the man behind the name, right? And you know, I get to work all the time with Mr. Jenkins, but like knowing his story and like how he grew up, and you know, it's just, it changes your perspective on the really important people. And you know, next season we've got an incredible lineup, and not to say that they're not all going to be these, you know, high up people. I mean, some of them are just your regular
Average
people
Joe.
like me.
Yeah.
And I'm just, it makes me very proud of our community. And it's so much fun getting to know them on a deeper level.
Well, and getting to know some of the community itself, right? I mean, we got to know so much about a local flower shop and the history behind that.
yeah.
And then we get to talk to one of your besties who, you know, is an inspiration to a lot of young girls around here.
Yeah. And Nathaniel Bryan,
yeah.
I mean, he messages me regularly to keep me updated on the things that are happening now. And I mean, I truly, if I see him out, I consider him my friends.
Yeah.
And
Like,
then we just had Jen and them on that were, you know,
Yes.
that was so much fun, kind of getting to know so much about them and how they've grown their business, not only here.
Well, and I think it's just
But
just getting
nationally.
started.
It's crazy.
I mean, I think that business is about to blow
I'm
up.
telling you, I said it a bunch last episode, but HGTV, I mean, go
I
talk to
know.
these people.
Give
Like this
them a
is,
call.
it was
And then
so
we've
much fun.
got the big Country Fest coming up,
Yeah.
and we got to announce
You haven't got your
that.
tickets. Get
Yes.
them now.
I am so excited.
Because by the time we come back on this, my guess is, and we don't know the dates yet, but my guess is we will probably have just gotten done with that Country Fest.
Well, and there's some talk about maybe filming from the fest.
I would
so
love to.
We'll
So
see
we'll-
what we
we'll
come up
hopefully
with.
We've got to do that.
do
That would be fun.
'cause I
Media
love some-
passes, guys.
Yes, yeah. No,
And I think
love
he had
country
some more
music.
names he was going to give us beforehand too when he
Yeah.
got to release those. So we might have a
Few more
short.
of
We
those.
might throughout the summer. We may pop an episode in once or
Yes.
twice just to.
Give
we
an
don't want you
update.
guys to get bored.
You know, you don't. You
And
you,
we don't want to get bored.
you wanna know our
So
drama.
Don't have any other
Yeah.
anything else to do, you know, in
No.
our life.
Yeah, exactly. They want to know all about our drama, everything
Yeah.
that's going on, because we have so much of it.
We'll have to do
right?
like a special drill down just in like 10 questions.
Oh gosh.
How dramatic is
no.
your life
Or
been?
rapid questions.
Well, we'll see come summertime how all that goes for us. Maybe.
Listen, this is summer of love. I can feel it.
Let's hope so. Let's hope it's the summer of love. I'm 33 years striking out, so 34 is might going to be the
It's
right
your
one,
year,
right? It's the
okay.
year.
Yeah.
It's the year.
You got to remain positive.
Yes, positive vibes. We're going to make it happen. All those jokes aside, it's been an absolute pleasure to be able to do this for the community, because when we sat and thought about it, I don't think any of us could have thought about having all these people on and learning so much about the town that we all grew up in, and it's been a lot of fun. And with that being said, we've got a really, really awesome guest today.
We do. In fact, I've been nervous all day.
I know.
Like I've been like thinking about my questions and what do I want to ask, and really probably the deeper question, what do I want to learn from a life lived just so all out?
I think this is one of those podcasts that we're going to have questions, but there's a part of, I think, both of us and Brittany, you too, that just wants to let this person talk.
I
Yeah.
100%.
Where it goes is where it goes.
I mean, how can you live a life that big and interject any question? Like I just want him to get it out.
Yeah,
So that
just
we can hear
tell
it.
us your story, because I could sit and listen to
Yes.
this like it was an autobiography
I-
forever. You know,
That's my plan tonight, is just to tune out and just really pay attention to just his words. And so we are having the very one and only Joe Prather come in this evening and sit down with us. Super humbled that he would even consider coming to talk to us.
when they said that he would come on, I was actually shocked. I didn't think it was going to happen.
I called him, so I got to call him over the weekend, and he answered. And I talk to a lot of people on the phone. I
Yeah.
don't normally like stumble over my words, but I could hardly even get out my name. I'm like, this is very Rachel Brady. Anyway,
My name's Rachel.
he was like talking to a real life celebrity, and he was so gracious. He was like, "Well, Rachel, when you want me to come in. And it was like talking to my dad.
Yeah.
And, you know, he seems actually excited, which is wild to me. A man that has accomplished so much in his life and is on all these boards.
You think he's
wants to
tired of all of
visit.
it, right? You think, but it didn't seem like that at all.
No, he's so alive and so excited to be here with us, and we are very humbled, all of us, to get a chance to just interview and talk to him.
Yeah, it's I think it's a great one to end on, because he's done so much for our community, so much for the growth of our community. He knows history like you would never believe. And something Mayor Gregory told us a couple of weeks ago was, you know, if you ever get the chance to sit down with him and talk with him on a podcast, he says, you'll realize he doesn't forget people's names. And I was like, I know a lot of people say that, you know, you don't forget names. I hear, and we'll find out, but I hear he does not forget a name. Like, it is not just him saying it. Like, if he meets you and he knows, and you've met him one time and he knows your name, he will never forget
That's
it.
an incredible memory.
It's a great trait to have.
It is a great
I'm
trait
jealous
to
of
have.
that memory.
Me too.
I have 4 names, and I don't remember all of them when I'm trying to tell people what my own name is. So I don't it's bad enough.
That's funny.
No, I'm terrible with names, but I'm excited to have him on. But before we do, it's just a big thank you.
Yeah.
It is.
Thank you for tuning in.
Yeah,
Thanks
to
for watching
everybody
this whole time.
for watching this entire season, or the episodes that you might have watched, and hoping that you come back and see us in season 2. We're grateful. We're humbled by the opportunity to even be able to talk to all you guys and help you guys, you know, kind of see what we love so much about our own community.
Absolutely. Well, with no further to do,
Ready
We
to do
hope
it?
you have a great summer.
enjoy your
Yes.
summer, and
Yes,
we'll
a
see you
great
in the
summer.
fall. And I believe our guest has just arrived. We'll be right back. Hi, guys. We are back from break, and I am so excited about today's guest. So you've heard of the highway, but you are about to meet the man. So we are sitting down with Joe Prather. This is honestly a huge honor for us. We're so excited to have him. He is a legend. He's lived just one of the most massive and incredible lives. And I am super excited to be sitting down with you and interviewing you today. So,
Well, thank you so much, Rachel, and it's an honor for me to be here and to sit down with the 3 of you, plus my good friend Mayor Jeff Gregory, who is one of the finest men I know, and it makes me proud. And I just love to meet and interface with new people in the community and with people of all ages. I mean, I'm elderly, but I try to make myself believe that I'm not. But I enjoy being around people of all ages, and so far it's worked well for me. And so I try to stay involved and do my part for the community, and stay involved with my family. We have a large family, and I'm proud of every one of them. And it just so I have a wonderful life in Elizabethtown, Kentucky, and so this is where I enjoy living. I have lived other places. I lived here as a teenager, but going back from the start, maybe.
that's exactly
That's
where
our first question, right?
Oh, really? Well,
It was. Because she said it, everybody knows you and knows your name, but a lot of people, you know, I would say kind of our age are wanting to know your story. We hear the stories from our grandparents and our parents, but let's hear it from the man himself. Tell us about what it was like growing up here.
Well, I'll tell you something that's interesting. I went out to one of the restaurants in town to do carryout one time about a couple of years ago, and this young person, I went up to pay, and she looked at my credit card, and she says, Joe Prather, are you named after that highway? So, but I really was born. My father was originally from Meade County. My mother was from the Vine Grove area. My grandparents, my maternal grandparents, were a big family in the St. John area here in Hardin County. They were Pendletons. There was a huge family of them, I think 14 children.
Wow.
Which, anyway, we have had deep roots in Hardin County. But my father and mother had moved to Louisville from the farm in Big Spring, Kentucky. It's Big Springs right down where Hardin meet and Breckenridge. There's a monument where they corner there at Big Spring. And so, but anyway, they'd moved to Louisville for a time while my dad worked up there. He worked in a plant that he worked in for a time, making parts for the war effort. And but I was born in a house in South Louisville, but when I was like 2 years old, we moved back to Big Spring. And so we lived in the town of Big Spring. It's not an incorporated town, but it's an area. And but then when I was 46, I was just barely 6 years old, we moved to a farm about 3 miles from Big Spring, which is up on Highway 220, and it's near where the Cochran family live now, which Bill Cochran is the dad, and he has sons, and they farm 2,000 or 3,000 acres down there now that they managed to buy on that plateau. But we walked every day back and forth to Big Spring, that 3 miles each way, to go to a one-room school. 1 room, 8 grades, 1 teacher.
Now I got to ask, because our parents always say they walked uphill both ways. Was it uphill both ways?
Well, I'll tell you, we were able to walk downhill in the morning, and that put us uphill on the way home.
Uh-oh.
It would have been better for us if it had been the other way.
It'd been a little cooler in the mornings, yeah.
So, but anyway, there were 6 of us children, 3 boys and 3 girls, and I had 2 older sisters and an older brother, and a younger sister and a younger brother who was a baby when we moved to the farm in January of 46. Anyway, we existed. We lived in a house with no electricity, no running water. We either got our water from a cistern out beside the house or from a spring down over the hill, and guess who carried the water from the spring? Us kids. So, but I went 4 years of school. I went through the 5th grade. They let me skip a year, and then we lived on a dirt road. And just right before my 6th grade year, they built a gravel road back by where we lived, and we thought we were in heaven. But anyway, they started sending a school bus, and so they bused us down to Howe Valley Elementary down on Highway 76. And so I went there for my 6th grade year, and I remember the first day I was really afraid when I was riding that bus down to school, because I thought, 1 grade, 1 room, I'll be the dumbest kid in that class. But turned out, I could be competitive, and so
I'd say so, just a little bit. I don't know how many of them are have got the name you've got around this area now, right?
Well, there's still some of them around here that live. Still, some of them in the Cecilia area and around, a few of them. A lot of them are deceased, but some of them are still living, and I'm in contact with a few of them.
Good.
That's awesome.
But my father took a job with Olin Chemical Company, and they were in Brandenburg down on the river, and they had a gas pipeline that ran across country and went up in Greene County and hooked into one of the big pipelines up there at Gabe, Kentucky, in Greene County. And so we moved to E-Town when I was 11 years old and had finished the 6th grade. All we'd ever known was work, and so I thought, well, everybody's supposed to work, so I went out looking for a job, and that's when I met Flo Bowles. Flo Bowles was in charge of distribution, and that day we didn't have a news enterprise back then, of course, and so, but Mr. Bowles Flo was as he later told me to call him. He was the distributor for the Courier-Journal and Louisville Times here. So you had to be 14 years old in order to have a paper route. So I had a brother who was 3 years and 3 months older than I. We worked it out, and he put it in my brother's name, but I carried the papers. And I rode a bicycle with a big basket on the front of it, and I'd fly down that street throwing papers up on the porch and that kind of thing. And then I got a job, in addition to that, working for Seal Test milk truck driver, where I was the runner off that milk truck, putting it out on the porches and running in certain doors, actually putting it in the refrigerator. And so that was a life I lived in Elizabethtown, Kentucky. E-Town probably in that day had 3,500 people, 4,000 maybe.
Wow.
That's crazy.
Wow.
The outskirts were Helmwood, down right off Dixie there, and it wasn't all that big. We thought people there were wealthy, and I guess they were compared to us, but we lived in a rented house that Clyde Howard owned. That's our city attorney, our retired circuit judge. It's his granddad. He owned a rental house over on Beach Street, and it was, you could tell it had been rented some. but anyway, we moved into that, but had a good life here for 5 or 6 years, and I went down to the public school for 7th and 8th grade, and I really got a good education for those grades down there. But anyway, I had a cousin who had moved from Vine Grove in the meantime over here, and he was 2 or 3 years older than I, and so he grabbed me one day and he said, "You're getting ready to go to high school," said, "You're going to E-Town Catholic." He took me up there and enrolled me, and so I started high school at E-Town Catholic High, and I spent 3 years there, got a wonderful education for 3 years there. And right after I finished my junior year, my dad came in and he said, "I'm tired of driving to Brandenburg to work at Olin Chemical." He was working at the plant by then. So he said, "We're moving to Brandenburg." I said, "Well, I'm going back to Big Spring." So I moved in with an uncle down there, and just he and I. My aunt had passed away, and I lived on the farm and went to high school my senior year at Vine Grove, and I ended up staying there 38 years.
Wow.
And when I was 27, I established my own real estate and auction company. When I was 25, I had gone.
That's amazing.
Then you could take the test to be a real estate broker, and if you could pass it, suddenly you were one. Now you have to serve 2 years or in sales before you can even take the exam, I believe. And but so starting in '65, I started my own real estate and auction company when I was 25, and we did pretty well with that for 27 years. And,
wow.
But then when I was 27, I ran for state representative against the incumbent, and we were able to win that race. And so I went to Frankfort. I literally had to get a map to find out how I got there.
Yeah.
And so I really enjoyed 3 terms in the House. In 1972, D. Huddleston was elected to the U.S. Senate. And so in 73, that seat was open, and I ran for that seat and was elected to the state Senate. We were able to carry, out of 42 precincts in Hardin County, we carried all but 1. And so it went back. A lot of the success there was not only the people I'd come to know in the north end of the county, but people that I knew from my time as a teenager, and I'd put the paper on their porch on a lot of them, and that kind of thing. But E-Town's always been special, and as Vine Grove remains special. But my wife grew up in Buffalo, Kentucky, in LaRue County, and she grew up on a farm.
Now, how'd you meet her?
Well, that's an interesting story. I was, of course, married with 4 stair-step children. Was married when I was 18 years old,
Wow.
if you can believe that, to a girl who was in the same class in Vine Grove that I was.
I got to ask this about Vine Grove. So you're saying Vine Grove, you finished your last year of grade school in Vine Grove. What building would that have been? Of high school. So what building would that have been now? Is it like...
It's on Brown Street.
Is it the Brown Street building? What we know is the Brown Street building now.
That's correct.
Okay.
That's where that's where I was, and I played basketball there, and as I did at E-Town Catholic, and always loved sports. We actually played basketball against teams out of Louisville like St. X and Manual, and I remember one night going to Manual to play ball, and they put me guarding a 6'11" fella.
Oh, no.
I could hit him in the knees, but
that was about it.
That was about it.
Well, I didn't mean to get you off track there, but because I know you're talking about your wife, but I was just interested because I'd always heard about Brown Street and how it was the old high school in Vine Grove, and I was wanting to see if that was the one that you met her at. That's
where I graduated. But anyway, we were married for 13 years. Sounds about right. I have to do my arithmetic. And it was one that, when you're married at 18 and then you're 30, 31, you're a different person. And we didn't have anybody to tell us, you don't need to get married at that age.
You mean some things don't change? Because I feel like sometimes in our lives we feel the same way. Yeah.
So anyway, she decided that she was willing to give me custody of the children. And that was a time that I had met my wife, Jenny. But the way I met her, the question that was asked earlier, Rachel, was her father. I was in the House of Representatives then, and her dad was the sheriff in LaRue County, B.F. Brown. He came to Frankfort on certain legislation to do with the Sheriff's Association, and so I got to know him. Great fella. One day he came and said, I'd like to have you come down for dinner Saturday night. And I said, me come to Hodgenville on Saturday night? He said, well, I've got a 22-year-old daughter. I said, I'll be there at 6 o'clock. So that's how we met. And the rest is history.
And how many years is that now?
53.
Oh, congratulations.
That's awesome.
Soon will be.
That is awesome.
My children, we had 4 children. We've lost two sons to cancer.
I'm so sorry.
We still have our daughter and an older son living. We have then Jenny and I have the one son, Jody, who's a medical doctor and was here for many years, and now he moved to Louisville with Baptist Health Systems, and now he's head of a medical organization in Cincinnati. Wow. So anyway, but we keep him coming back to Kentucky often, including this weekend.
Good.
But anyway, we've had a wonderful life, still do. We lived over in Foxfire subdivision for 20-some years. 4 years ago, we built a house over by Grace Heartland Church, the subdivision there, Heartland subdivision. Mm-hmm. We bought 11 acres at the back of that entry street and up on the hill in the woods. And
it's a beautiful spot.
We carved out a spot and built a house, and we love it up there. It's private, but yet it's so convenient.
Yeah, that is convenient.
Yeah. So
Rachel and I were talking before you got here a little bit, and you may talk better about this than I did. We were talking about just your history and some of that you've told us a little bit about, but a lot about your history in service. So I'm just curious as to kind of what got you into wanting to do, I say community service or public service for the area, and how you, at 18, you said you ran at 25 or 27 for the first time?
Yes.
27 for the first time. What about this area got you into thinking, like, I want to go represent this place? What got that feeling going on for you, and what made you run for the first time?
I'll tell you, I had always been really interested in politics and public service. And I remember I remember being on the farm with a battery radio, because without electricity, that's what you had. And I remember first listening on that radio to all of the talk and the advertising that went on when Harry Truman ran in 1948 against Thomas Dewey, who was the mayor of New York. Everybody around us would have sworn that Thomas Dewey was going to be the next president. In fact, the daily newspaper in Chicago printed a headline that hit the streets saying that Dewey had won the election. And,
I remember reading about this.
Yeah. But Harry Truman, I always loved him because he was for the little man. And so I took an interest in that, and then I listened to the Republican convention when Adlai Stevenson was running against Dwight D. Eisenhower, and I kept that up during all that time, and I was always interested in, I don't know, it just seemed to be ingrained in me. And my paternal grandfather back in the 1920s was the jailer in Brandenburg in Meade County. And my dad grew up in living quarters attached to the jail. And it's now where he grew up in a portion of what's now the restaurant, the jailhouse pizza in
I was
Brandenburg.
about to ask that. Yeah.
So he's, but anyway, there are a lot of Prathers in Meade County, but anyway, it just seemed natural to me to be interested in what went on in government, and government affected every phase of your life that I could see, and so I just wanted to be a part of it. And so
now that still had to be a bit of a challenge. I mean, you had started your real estate career, you were busy with that, and then there had to be several children running around.
There were.
So at that point, to take the risk of walking away from all of that and going into that, I mean, there had to be some level of fear to that step, or no?
Somehow I figured out how to continue selling real estate and holding auctions, and still being able to campaign, and it was a tough first race. I was running against the incumbent, and I got Mr. Jake Bell, who was his family still is down in below Blue Ball Hill in the valley there, and his family still lives on that big farm he had, but he retired from the Forestry Service, and he knew everybody in rural Hardin County. Every day that I could not be involved in real estate, I would pick Mr. Bell up, and he'd ride with me on the roads, knocking on, well, he knew the people. I mean, he could just introduce me to them. And so
So how long did it take to get to Frankfort back then versus how quickly you can get there now with roads and everything else? How different was that?
I think the Bluegrass Parkway, I'm trying to think of the year that was, but otherwise we had to travel Highway 62. And so it was more like 2 hours instead of an hour and 20 minutes or something. Yeah. But it was a harder drive in
I can
those
imagine.
days.
Yeah.
So
Not so much of a straight shot.
no, it wasn't. But I'd have to run back and forth, and sometime I'd have to finish with a session and head home to talk to somebody about a real estate deal, and then get up early the next morning and at 5 o'clock in the morning and take off back. And
it wasn't like it is now where people have second houses in Frankfort where they can just stay there overnight and everything else. You were coming back home.
I had a little apartment there that I shared with a couple other members of the legislature. You know, we had to keep it, I won't say cheap, we had to keep it inexpensive. Then moving on over to the Senate, and I was elected there, served my first session in 1974, and then in 1976, Julian Carroll, who I was kind of I was in leadership in the House. I was the majority whip in the House in my second session. But then I moved on over to the Senate and was elected and served in 74 as a regular member. But then prior to the 76 session, I ran against the incumbent President Pro Tem, who that was the top leadership in the Senate. The Lieutenant Governor was the ceremonial presiding officer, but some days or for a week at a time they wouldn't show up. But as far as moving bills to committee and deciding which committee got what bill and that kind of thing, the President Pro Tem was head of that decision making. And so I was elected to that position in my second session in the Senate. And I was there until in 1986. I'd been in the legislature. They changed the year I was elected, that we were elected, and instead of a 4-year term, we got a 5-year term one time. And so I had been there 19 years total, and I was 46. But I decided that I needed to come home and make a living, because if you really play it straight in politics, you don't make a lot of money in Frankfort in the legislature. So I came home, and so in the meantime, I had trying to think of the years moving forward to then. In 1981, there had been a de novo bank that started by some people in Radcliffe called the Bank of North Hardin. So they had a couple of the major investors in that bank. Together they owned a big majority of the stock in that bank, but they couldn't get along, and neither one would sell to the other.
That's a problem.
And so I put together a group of Bob Cooper, who was like a brother to me. He had Bob Cooper Insurance.
Cooper Insurance, as I was going to say, yeah.
And Don Skeeters, who I played basketball with at Vine Grove when I was on the basketball team, and he was the other one. We hawked everything we owned plus our soul, and we were able to finance buying that bank.
Wow.
And set up a bank holding company. And that was 81, October. And then in 1985, the Farmers Deposit Bank in Brandenburg, it was the Butcher brothers out of Knoxville had bought that bank from the person who had owned it for 40 years and wanted to retire. And so they got in trouble with the regulators, and so they sold out to a group out of Texas. And we were able to leverage what we had been able to grow the bank in Radcliffe to, along with the assets of the Farmers Deposit Bank, and buy that bank.
Now, what did you continue to call it, North Hardin, Bank of North Hardin, at that point when you bought it, or did you change the name of it?
Well, we continued to call it Bank of North Hardin for 2 or 3 years. And so then we put the two banks together in a 2-bank holding company then. Mm. But then in 1992, Liberty National Bank out of Louisville approached me, and they were interested in buying both banks because they had bought what was the Bank of E-Town that had been chartered here sometime in the 80s. So they had the Bank of E-Town, which they had changed the name of already here to Liberty National Bank. We were able to negotiate a deal where we just exchanged our stock for Liberty National stock. 1.5 years later, Bank One out of Ohio came in and did the same thing with Liberty National Bank. So suddenly we were Bank One stockholders. And Bank One got into some difficulty somehow, and J.P. Morgan Chase came in and bought them, which included our stock. So then we were J.P. Morgan Chase stockholders. It's all a stock exchange as you go, and every time you make every time somebody buys, they pay some premium, so it's a good deal. So anyway, I remain a J.P. Morgan Chase shareholder and proud to be one.
That's awesome.
It's crazy because I come from the banking world, so I'm in mortgages now, but coming from the banking world before I stepped into mortgages, it's just crazy to hear that that's always happened, because when I was in banking, you would always hear about this bank got bought by this bank and this bank got bought by this bank, or these banks merged, and it sounds like it's been going on for a long time.
We always did it with a stock exchange. We weren't selling for cash and paying a big capital gains tax on whatever. We just kept on rolling. And
Now, I have a question for you. Did I understand that you never went to college? Like this, everything you've done in your life is all just from high school. Like you didn't go to this 4-year degree. And
I have 18 credit hours from night school at U of L back before I established my real estate company. I started working at American Airfilter Company in Louisville. I was 18 years old, and I worked there until I was 25 when I started my company. Mm-hmm. I got 18 credit hours at night school at U of L. I got 3 accounting courses and an economics course.
Those came in handy, didn't they?
Oh, yes. Oh, yeah.
You took the right ones.
We won't hold where you went against you or anything like that.
Hey, no, Joe and I are good friends over here.
Well, the president pro tem of the Senate had always been an attorney up until I came along. And people would come in and ask me where I went to law school. And I'd say, well, I didn't. They wanted me to go to college first. So, we made a joke out of it, but it all lighthearted. But no, I've never been to college.
Was there ever a point in your life where you felt, maybe they call it imposter syndrome, right? So where you felt like, oh, I don't belong, I'm in over my head. This is, I don't have the credentials or anything. And how did you overcome that? Because clearly you lived a huge life and have done so many amazing, cool things.
I don't ever recall feeling that way.
That's awesome. Good for you.
I've always subscribed to, when you get into something new, most important thing you can do is to decide not what you know, but what you don't know. Mm-hmm. And then you bring in people to fill in those spaces. Mm-hmm. And it's a team approach.
Yeah.
When I went in to preside, I did that in the banking business. I did that in working with agents in the real estate business, and I never had a big office, just a couple of agents. I was Secretary of Transportation for a time for my friend Steve Beshear. When he was governor, he called me and said, I know there's a lot that needs to be straightened out in transportation. He said, will you take that spot? I said, well, only for as long as it takes me to straighten it out. And I honestly tell you that I've done that so I can come home. And so I stayed with him 2 years there. But what I had to do is go in, and immediately that's what I did. I assessed what I didn't know, and I filled those gaps with good people. And their opinion mattered. I mean, we'd have sit-downs, and their opinion mattered.
Well, we've heard about your leadership, and I think that speaks a lot to it. Is a lot of the times I think that at least the three of us will say that our generation was kind of really through high school told to go to college and do this, and that was the way to go, and that's how you're supposed to do things. And then I quickly realized when I got into the real business world, and I'm sure Rachel and Brittany will say the same, and you will too, some of the most intelligent people I've ever been around didn't go to college. They don't have a degree. And it's because they're good with people, and they realize that when you use people's skill sets in the best ways possible, that and realize that you're not the person who can do everything and that you've got to build a good team around you. There's more to be said about that than having a degree.
Well, and you know, you have to look at our economy. You have to take a broad look. It's always been my philosophy. You know, somebody has to work on our automobiles. Somebody has to build our houses. Somebody has to do a multitude of things. I think what has happened lately that's working better than this movement, just go to college, go to college. Nothing wrong with going to college.
For sure.
I probably missed that in that it might have broadened what I retain in my mind. I try to make that up by reading everything I can get my hands on. Mm-hmm. I think that in our education system today, like high school, here in Hardin County, you know, the EC3 thing that is here, valuable. One of the best things that has ever happened to Elizabethtown, Mayor Gregory can tell you that for sure, as I think I can, is that we got the community college here.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
We are blessed today to be able to have that, have it working with the people at Fort Knox as people move and retire from the Army, and some of them still at a young age, that high school students move up. It's been a real pleasure for me to be involved for probably the last 40 years with the Industrial Foundation here. The type things with the community college and with EC3 and all of this ties back in with what we try to do at the Industrial Foundation and with the various industries here. And we are blessed today to have a community college here that is second to none. Dr. Justin Pate is top drawer. He is a blessing to this community. And he works with industry, he works with Fort Knox, he works with this community. He works with us at the Industrial Foundation, the city under the tutelage of Mayor Gregory. And the county is involved with the Industrial Foundation with Judge Tall, but everybody steps up and makes the Industrial Foundation all it can be. I was in the legislature during Governor Julian Carroll's term, and legislation came up before every little county was trying to have an industrial park. It doesn't work. Nobody can have one that is good enough to attract a major industry. So we passed legislation along with funding for the first two. We called it Multi-County Industrial Park, but it was regional. And I think it was Laurel County down on I-75 maybe, down in that Corbin section in that area. But we were one of the first two to take advantage of that, because in that day, back in the 70s, we had leadership then with the Industrial Foundation that they were doers. We were able to then have one of two first regional industrial parks.
Well, and I'm sure our location helps with that a lot too, especially around here with just how well located we are to so many large cities to be an industrial area, to be able to kind of ship out to all those different places.
Well, all of that impacts it. It really does. But it still takes people who are willing to commit the money. And that's what we had in this community. Some people did it individually. Some of the banks did it. Various businesses stepped up. And so same thing with the airport. I mean, that wasn't an easy thing to cause to happen. But you can see where we are today, and the airport's going to continue to improve, and it has a big effect on this whole area, this whole multi-county area.
Well, and speaking of that, I think one of the things Rachel had written down to ask, and I'll let her kind of go into it in a little bit more detail, but I mean, you've seen this since you were in a town that was, I think you said 3,500 to 4,000 people.
Right.
And I'll let you kind of take it from there.
Did you, sitting here today, did you ever expect E-Town? Did you have in your mind that this is what it would look like after all these years, or?
I felt that E-Town would continue to grow, but I had no way of envisioning that it would grow to be what it is today. Mm. My feeling is we're just getting started.
I like that.
I love it.
And you look around, I looked up the other day and, it looks like it's going to be gangbusters, but I see a Korean barbecue restaurant going in.
I'm so excited for that.
I'm ready for it. I'm ready for it to open up, yeah.
Well, I am too, because we try all the different types of food. We're food junkies when it comes to eating various kinds of food. And
so as a food junkie, what is the spot people don't talk about enough in this area that's a go-to for you that people just don't talk about enough, that they don't give it enough credit?
You talking about food?
Food, yep, and restaurants.
Well, I'll tell you, I don't know how we would do without green bamboo.
It's a classic.
We have our grandchildren in sometime. Where you want to carry in from? Vast majority of the time they'll say green bamboo.
That's the spot then.
Or we carry in from Kansai and we get sushi.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And Jenny doesn't even have to ask me what I want. She knows. Because I always want the same thing.
What's your favorite place or diner or anything like that used to be one of your favorites that's not around anymore, that some people can get some nostalgia from?
Oh, I think B&B Steakhouse up on North Dixie. The mayor's too young to remember that probably. Woody Burton ran that. Woody was an old-timer here, but he ran it for a long time. And Mimi, his wife. Downtown, there were all kind of restaurants. The old E-Town Cafe that was there down from where Ryder's men's store was, down 2 or 3 doors down toward the courthouse from there. We had the White Spot restaurant down on just in the block, I say it's south, it's East Dixie. They had the best hamburgers going.
And then the old pharmacies that used to be downtown and things like that, where you go in and it was also a diner, as a mix as a diner.
Well, they had Showers and Hayes. They had Taylor Drugs.
Taylor Drugs, yeah. I remember seeing pictures. We've got one in here somewhere, I think.
Sweets and Donovan. That was there around the corner from Newberry's, which is where J.R. Neighbors is today.
So how cool is it for you to see the revitalization of downtown?
It makes me happy as a clam. It's just, for the ones of us that love this community, that's one of the biggest things that's happened in this community in my lifetime, as far as the joy that comes from it for people of my generation.
Well, and it gets our generation excited too. We love it. We love going downtown.
There's rarely a weekend now that I'm not downtown for something, dinner or going out to grab a drink with friends. I mean, and growing up, that wasn't something we ever did. Or you went down to pay your car taxes or something, or do your registration, but
get your
never
ID.
went downtown.
Yeah.
And now you're going to have a boutique hotel and a restaurant in the courthouse.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
That's going to be really
I
cool.
still am waiting for them to explain how they're going to handle that parking, but
we'll get it figured out, right? As he looks at the mayor off camera.
But the developer out of Louisville, they don't do something by chance.
No.
That's involved in that. So that's the reason I rest easy when I have that question, because I know that I call them Whalen, but I think it's Wyland, the correct pronunciation. And so, but anyway, I just watch what they do in Louisville. I read everything I can get my hands on, the Wall Street Journal and Business First, and I read the News Enterprise online before they can get the print copy to me.
You've already read it.
Yeah. I even read the obituaries to be sure I'm not in it.
Oh, that's great.
That's hilarious.
That's great.
So anyway, but I've had a great run. If anybody told me that I would be able to look back and have the joy in my mind that I have for the life I've been able to live, I'd have thought you were kidding me. So and I'm still enjoying it. And
I know the two of us could sit here and Brittany too could sit here and talk with you for hours about just your life, the history, what you've seen in this community, what you've done to help this community get to where it is, because I know you've not given yourself enough credit for that, but 20 years of public service is a long time, and part of it was a very vital part in E-Town becoming what it is today. So I wanted to ask, I know Rachel probably has one more question too, but wanted to ask two quick questions. And my biggest one is for people that are our age, right? For anybody that's in our generation, who want to make an impact on their hometown, who want to do something to help grow this place. What do you do? How do you do it?
I think you talk to the people who have the experience, like the mayor, people who've been down that road and know which wheels need to be turned in order to continue the progress. I think there's a vast reservoir of knowledge out there among people who have been down the roads in elective office and in business. And I think that communicating with them is the best way to determine. And, you have the Chamber of Commerce here has a leadership E-Town.
Mm-hmm.
Those type entities are important. And some people, you think about it and you want to do the best thing you can, but you don't step up. I'm not talking about you. I'm using a general you. You don't step up and say, include me. That's the kind of thing. Go to the people who have already proven themselves. Ask them how you can make an impact, and let them suggest ways, or maybe even talk to somebody else who could have something that you then could get involved in that you're interested in. But it's all networking. Mm-hmm. That's what it's about.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing I failed to mention, I think, in this community that we are so blessed with, and that is our hospital.
You're on the board, correct, over there at the Baptist Health?
Well, I'm on the Baptist Health Foundation board.
Okay.
I'm chairman emeritus. In the revitalization of that board, I was the original chairman for, 7 years, 8 years, whatever it was. There'd been a foundation out there for years, but it was in name only. And so, anyway, the group of us came together, and Dennis Johnson was the president of Hardin Memorial then, or I guess that's the right title.
Yeah.
And he was all in, and he brought Tracy Trout in as the chief development officer at the hospital. And then she was in communication with some of us, and we developed other people that we would reach out to bring onto the board to revitalize the foundation. And that's been one of the highlights of my career. And I still am chairman emeritus, which means that I have a title, but I don't have to do as much work.
It's the best spot to be in.
Right.
But I was able to be a part of bringing people like Mike Bowers and Carl Swope onto the board. Dr. Bill Nash has been an important cog in that. He retired, and he took over the development committee, which meant he had to make the ask for money from a lot of people, and which is, that's the toughest thing for me to do. And Bill, he just acted as though that was just nothing wrong with that. So, those kind of things. Allison Willoughby, who is the president of Brandenburg Telecom, and had at the time Bluegrass Cellular. She was Dalton Tobin's daughter. Dalton is the one that founded Brandenburg Telephone Company when it was back small. I knew him well. He was from down at Irvington. because when I was in Vine Grove, I used to I used to have a lot of auctions in Meade County, and when I served, I didn't know where the county line was if I could help somebody while I was in Frankfort, and so I got to know him and Joe, his son, and Allison, and so she's the treasurer of the board now. Tara Still, or Tara Powers, who was she's another one on the board from Meade County. She and her husband Martin have Powers Paper Company.
Yeah, Power Saver up in Brandenburg, right?
Yeah, and they just I don't know whether they leased or bought that big building where it used to be a Kmart there on Knox Boulevard in Radcliffe. And they just took that over because they're expanding like crazy, and they have an operation somewhere on the West Coast. I don't know whether it's Oregon or Washington somewhere, and they've done well. And of course, I knew the Powers family. Martin's dad, he's one of 10 children of P.G. Powers. It was a friend of mine in Meade County. We have some really good people. Brown Gwynn is on the board. I hate to get into naming names because I'm going to miss somebody, but there are a lot of other good people on that board. And Well,
and we appreciate all the work you've done because, I mean, I'm being born at Hardin Memorial, and it was a great staple to the community, but what it has grown into and the Cancer Care Center now, and, I mean, it's just unbelievable.
The pavilion, I was just out there. Larry Hayes, who just retired not long ago from the Secretary of the Economic Development Cabinet, he was down to visit me the other day, and I had to take him by and show him the new pavilion, and he wanted to see it, and he couldn't believe what the addition to the hospital looked like.
It's beautiful. The addition's beautiful. If you've not been in it yet, and yeah. I mean, it's amazing.
I always said that when I was sharing there actively that, the hospital made the cake and we as a foundation then had to put the icing on it. And we were able to raise a considerable amount of money to do that. And like with establishing the neonatal intensive care unit, there'd never been one outside Louisville around here. And that's wonderful for families who have newborn who are not able to be taken home, those kind of things. It just makes you feel good about where you've been, what you've done, and keep the ball rolling.
Well, we appreciate all that and everything that you have done for us, for our community, for the hospital, and for everyone.
And for future generations.
100%.
I mean, I'm excited for my kids to grow up here, and I know that you've been a big part of that.
Absolutely.
Well, and I wanted to cover as much ground as I could, but I didn't want it to sound like that I was trying to build myself up because, I'm where I need to be, and I am as content with life as I can be, and so.
Well, a lot of us are where we are because of you, and I know we don't take that lightly. To some people it may just be a road name, but from the rest of us and hearing your story, it becomes clear how much you mean to the community.
Well, bless your hearts. And Jim Sharp, who was here one time as the head man out at Dow Corning, he said in Kentucky, you can say anything about somebody that you want to say, no matter how bad, as long as you end it with "bless your little heart."
Bless your heart.
Well,
that's so true.
That's a perfect way to end
staple.
it.
So that's all I know.
Well, we appreciate you being on, and you probably didn't know this, but you are our last guest of the season before we start our second season. So
really?
You're our big finale. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, well, I've never been a cleanup hitter before.
We just saved the very best for last.
Yes.
That's what we try
Bless
to
your
do.
heart. I'm honored.
Well, very, very inspired, sir. Very, very inspired. What a life. It's
been good.
Yeah, I'm
Been a
proud to
good
get to
run.
sit here. So
Proud to meet you young folks.
For sure.
absolutely. All right, guys. Well, thank you all so much for joining us this evening. This was Hometown Hustle, and we will see you next season.